Hello, my name's Colin Campbell. I'm with Polygon. We're going to spend the next hour together looking at the wonders of Civilization 6. We're going to have a whole campaign that is truncated into 3 parts, early, middle and late. And we're going to try to look at as many of the systems as we can as we go on a wonderful adventure together, conquering the world. And there is almost always a story when you play these games that you kind of make up in your head. And in this story, there's kind of a romance going on between me, the Emperor of America, or I should say the President of America, Teddy Roosevelt, and 2 other world leaders who I kind of take a bit of a fancy to. I think I should say, first of all, that I'm a happily married man. I'm gently coasting through middle age. I don't have what you would call a wandering eye, but I do sometimes have these fantastical crushes on fictional characters. And when I did a preview of this game, I kind of got a little bit sweaty about Cleopatra. And the same thing happens to me in this game when I meet some of the world leaders. So we'll go through that romantic narrative arc over the next hour. But first of all, it's the early game stuff. I am going to kind of like cut forward to some of these moments. But first of all, a couple of house rules. We're going to get really deep and dirty into this as far as possible. I've played a lot of Civilization 5. I'm going to kind of assume that you've played a lot of Civilization 5 as well. Otherwise, why on earth would you be wanting to spend an hour looking at this game and listening to me? But if you haven't played Civilization 5 or any of the Civ games, basically it goes like this. You are on a map. You build a city, the city builds buildings, the buildings build units, you use those units to explore and to exploit the countryside around you and to create resources which then build more buildings and more units. Some of those units are military and those military units conquer your neighbours. And throughout all of that, there is a whole bunch of other stuff going on, including culture and religion and tourism. It's complicated. I've been playing this build, which I'll talk about in a minute, for 33 hours, and there's a couple of extra hours where I was having some problems with crashes. You know, this is a preview build, so there are some problems with it that we all should skate over because it's not the final build. But it's pretty much done. You know, you can tell that everything is pretty much in place. The restrictions on this are quite important to note. I showed them to you very early on in this video, which is you can only play as one of 10 civilizations out of the final 20, or the 20 that come at launch, I should say. And you can only play as Prince, which is kind of like a medium difficulty, and I normally play much higher than that. So I found it to be fairly straightforward for me to win. I played a campaign on continents as the Empress of Scythia, and I won that. I played as Queen Victoria on islands, and oh, hello, Queen Victoria. We were just talking about you. How nice to see you. So I played as Queen Victoria on islands, and I had that pretty much in the bag. I stopped playing somewhere around the mid 20th century, but I had it sewn up. And now I'm playing as Washington, and you're going to see me go through to the late game, and at the end of it I'm going to be in a pretty powerful position. I won't no spoilers, but let's just say that I go a little bit power crazy towards the end. So what you saw there was already we're seeing some of the systems at play, which would be meeting other people in diplomacy. Obviously at this point of the game, super simple, not very much you can do. And also you saw that first style of government you have. They're bringing back that ability to have your own kind of a government. Moving forward a little bit here, we'll go back to the government situation, because first of all, I want to talk about some of these other systems that come up. First of all, here is the trade system, which I think was sort of started off in the late part of the last game. The trade system builds the roads. You don't need settlers to build roads anymore. Just set the trade system off. They build the roads and they confer goodies on the city. Now here is the religion stuff. Now when I played as Victoria, I neglected religion and it kind of sucked. Like if you don't get on to religion, it takes a big part of the game away, which is I like to have my little empire, and I like to have it so that everyone is the same religion, because you get all those, not because I'm a fanatic or anything, but you get all the benefits from all your cities. And I just don't like the idea of these these Johnny foreigners coming into my country with their alien beliefs and winning around my people. So I'm kind of like, I'm okay if my religion doesn't really go beyond my borders, but in my borders I like to have it. And I like to have things like this because they do confer happiness and all sorts of other benefits. And in this game there are tons and tons, many more benefits on offer that you can manage at a micro level. So I've played a lot with religion here in this game, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think they've kind of broken it down and built it back up again, and it works really well. So you can build your own religion. There's mine with the butterfly, and I'm already a believer. I'm a full believer in polygonism. So you can figure out for yourself the central tenets of that religion. So as you can see here, from earlier on, there's Washington. I've built some cities around me. They're coming along okay. I've met up with a very aggressive a very aggressive neighbour. The Romans, they don't change. They're always the same. They want land and they want you kowtowing before them. Well, it's not happening, pal. They came up. I was quite happy with this river here that you can see sort of to the south of Washington as the end of my domain, because there's tons of land behind me, this sort of hinterland that nobody's going to go near. It's like the outer reaches of this Pangaea, and I was like, well, it's fine. I'll just have Washington as the front of my empire and protecting everything behind it, and I've got all these lovely mountains to the side and the ocean to the other side. So I was like, I'm in a really good position here. But of course, the Romans park up two of their cities right next to my city. They take over these little bits of land that are on my side of the river. This is how crazy civilization gets. The computer's not thinking, the AI is not thinking about this stuff, but I'm thinking about it, and it upsets me. But I'm like, okay, fine, let them have their city. I'll just about suck it up. And then eventually Rome, being Rome, declares war on me. But what I've got up my sleeve is some really, I'm big on archers. I've upgraded my archers to crossbowmen, and these crossbowmen are going to make life very unpleasant for the Romans. Now, what you can also see at the top of the screen are these red units, the sort of red, the barricade. What are they called? I forget what they're called. The red units, and these belong to Kabul, which is one of my cities. I've done deals with this guy. I've sent loads of envoys to this guy, and the city system, like the religious system, is so much better in this game than it was before. I can go to Kabul, give him a ton of money, and say, just lend me all your units for 30 turns. So I could have all those units if I wanted to from Kabul in my war efforts. Now, just having a sip of tea there. These units are obviously not state-of-the-art units. They're usually a few years behind. But as far as just like flooding your enemies' cities and having them distracted by them while you execute your strategy is just great. And I did use them before, but I didn't use them this time because they're just a bit too far away from the action. So I didn't use them at all in this game. So here we are. You can see the combat is pretty much what you would expect from Civilization 5. Is hex-based. There's no stacking. Oh, well, actually, there is a kind of stacking which you come to later on in the game. But at this part of the game, each unit's 1 unit per hex, and it's a rock paper shotgun. A rock. So used to saying that now. Rock paper scissors thing, where mounted against pikemen, against archers, against siege units, and they all have their strengths and the differences. And here you can see some of the overview with the city states. I get given every now and again some envoys, and I choose where to send them. And if I have 3 envoys in Kabul, they're going to confer benefits on me. And each city has specific benefits, whether they're cash, religious, military, cultural. So whatever you're focusing on, you can focus on that. And if you get that city in your pocket by sending them way more envoys than anybody else, then they're in your pocket for pretty much the whole game. So it's much more. You have much more control over them. Their military units aren't just milling around like pretending to help you when a war kicks off, and they tend to be a bit more loyal if you keep an eye on them. And also, you're not throwing cash at them. They've given you a different currency to deal with this, which I think is a very smart thing to do, because I found city management in previous games to be a real pain in the backside. But with this game, I enjoyed it a lot, and I actually felt the benefit of each envoy that I sent to them. So here you can see, I mean, you're probably looking at the map, at the different hexes and what they do. Now, this game, the big thing about this game that I haven't even got to yet, which you probably know about, is that you can build districts outside your city. So previous Civ games, if you wanted to build a barracks, you just built a barracks. It's somewhere in your city, and the same with a library, the same with a temple. Now, if you want to build a barracks, you've first got to build this military encampment, and it's outside the city, and then after that, everything sort of military related goes into that encampment. And the same goes for your market, your bank, your stock exchange. The same goes for all your sort of like all your happy places, your circuses and your stadiums. And then the same goes for your educational establishments. And so you can place those in certain places where they will get extra benefits. Now, I have to say that I didn't get very good at that. I'm kind of like, well, I'm placing it according to, I don't want to destroy this nice building that I've built, this nice piece of farmland or whatever. So I haven't at all got the measure of those bonuses yet. Maybe by accident I've got a few. I mean, I did at one point plant my university complex next to a rainforest because I'd heard that was a good idea. But I haven't gotten good at it, and that's certainly something that I would work on. But does it work? I'm going to say at this point, yeah, because you're sort of restricted in each city about what you can build. If you're the sort of person who just likes to build everything in pretty much the same order, you can't really do that, because you got to choose which district you're going to build. And they don't just let you build a bunch of districts. You've got to grow to a certain level to build the next district. So if you've gone heavy on military and education, and suddenly you realise that, oh man, I've not gotten any religion going on, then you need a city, and you can't put it in your capital because it hasn't grown enough for the next district. You need a city that to do that with. And so you go to New York, it's like, oh, thank God, I can drop a district in this city, and it's going to have to be the religious one. So the game kind of it confers those benefits on your whole civilization by some matrix that I don't fully understand. But at the same time, you're more carefully operating your cities at an individual level than you were with Civilization 5. And I think that, if I was to sum up this game, is the main difference here with this game, is that the relationship between benefits which are global and benefits which are local has been shifted. And the big change for me is there's no happy button anymore. Like, I am not constantly looking at the happy button because worrying that, oh my God, I'm -1, I'm getting beaten up all over my land on everything from population growth to, I suppose I should be commenting on what's going on, but you get it. They're fighting, to production. And it's a nightmare. So the whole game is kind of really built around trying to keep people happy up until the point where you trigger those benefits where it's not a problem anymore. And that really kind of bummed me out as a Civilization 5 player. Now, the problem is keeping your individual cities happy. And they are generally kept happy if you keep everybody happy. So if you've got your luxury goods, the benefits get shared out. If you've got cities which have a lot of happy buildings, then I think, I don't want to be quoted on this, but I think that benefit gets shared out as well. So what I found was, sort of late in the game when I was growing pretty fast, I started building quite a lot of happy buildings, and that tended to keep people happy. So there's not such a scramble, not such a crazy scramble for luxury goods, although they are still important. And if there's a deal going, or I see a luxury good sitting around, I'm going to take it. But I'm not going to make my whole campaign about securing luxury goods, which I think warped Civilization 5 to a certain extent. And by the way, these are just my opinions. I know I've played a lot of Civ 5. I play it a certain way. I know that some of my friends play it a completely different way, and they're a lot smarter than I am. But this is just the way I play. And I tend to be one of those people who, I make my little empire, and I don't really worry too much about trying to win a science victory or a religious victory or a cultural victory. I'm just like, I'm just going to make a nice little empire where everyone's happy and nobody wants to fuck with me because I've got all the military units and I've got all the walls up and the castles. And by the end of the game, if somebody is getting a little bit ahead of me, I'll go and destroy them, or I'll just let them win and be happy with my happy little land. So that's just the way I play. And you might be watching this thinking, oh my God, why hasn't he already crushed Rome? Or why hasn't he already crushed all his neighbours and taken over the eastern half of this Pangaea? I just don't want to. That's the bottom line. Is I'm probably the thing is that with this game, it's called Civilization, but it's really about conquest, isn't it? I've tried to play with like just 3 or 4 cities, and we just focus on culture or technology, and you can't because the amount you need in order to generate that much culture or education, you need lots of cities. And if you have lots of cities, you need lots of soldiers to defend them. And if you have lots of soldiers, you're not spending money, you're not spending currency on those other things. And so it's harder to win with those with culture, with science, because you can get by with those things running at pretty much a minimum, but you can't get by with crappy soldiers, a crappy military. You will be destroyed. So that's just my view on it, and I just can't bear the idea of any of my cities ever being taken over by foreigners. It's my job to take over the cities, and here I am giving poor old Arpinum, my Latin is not what it used to be, a run for its money. It's now mine. He really shouldn't have parked those 2 cities next to my capital and then started a war with me. He was asking for trouble. He's got a lot of these military units, these siege units, and they're going to give me a bit more trouble, but ultimately they're not defended very well. The AI's never the smartest, never the sharpest pencil in the box when they come fight against humans. Later on in the game at the more difficult settings, they get the more advanced units faster and they make more of them, but they're never really what you would call tactical geniuses. Not that I am, but I tend to follow certain patterns, which is stay near your city, soak up the pain, let them be sort of like killed, and then when they wear themselves out, go and march over to their city, surround it, and Bob's your uncle. So cup of tea there. So what happened here was the Romans got crushed. I then took over. We're going to skip forward in a little bit where I took over the other city here, Aretum. These names. So I had those 2 cities, which I then kept for the rest of the game. I didn't go any further for Rome. I just thought, let's just keep Rome on the back burner. If I actually needed to try to win a conquest victory where I needed to take over a few capital cities quickly, I feel pretty certain that I can bring Rome to heel. And for the rest of the game, he's going to be kind of sitting there sulking at me. I don't care. This is one of the things about the diplomacy that I really like this time round. When I say I really like, I'm evolving my opinions about it. Is because when they do crazy things, and they still do crazy things, like there was no good reason for Rome to attack me then. You know why? It's because Trajan is completely obsessed by land, and he wants land, and he just has to have it. And there have been world leaders who are crazy and they're monomaniacs, and so that kind of works. When I can see what his motivations are and understand his motivations as they change through the game, he starts off with one that and there's another one that you don't know that reveals itself later in the game. Then it starts to make sense, and some of them are a bit kind of nonsensical, I suppose. The Vikings, they only respect you if you've got a big navy. Well, that's all well and good, but if you're playing a Pangaea campaign and you don't really want to spend money on expensive ships, you're not going to do that. And if the Vikings are sulking about it, then hard cheese. And I'm not going to change my strategy just to keep Olaf or whatever he's called happy. So what you end up doing is kind of like trying to throw some treats at these enemies in order to sort of keep them on side. And it helps that the luxury resource trading stuff is a lot more open than in previous games. That there are situations where you go to a world leaders and they're like, hey, I've got this one luxury resource and what I want from you is 6 luxury resources and gold, and just like, no, that's not going to happen. I don't care, especially when you've got lots of nice stuff sitting there in your pocket and you're not bringing it out. So but there are other times when people are sensible, so you are trading. You're not going to that situation where there's no trading going on. Here I'm meeting this fellow from the Congo. He's got a lovely face. Oh, and his country is called Madrid, so we can see he's been up to no good. Now, I told you there'd be some romance, and my first little crush in this game, after Cleopatra, is this warrior queen, who I think is... I just love the way she looks at me as if I am just a worm, a worthless piece of garbage. And I'm completely madly in love with her. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm just going to give her a present. Because, that's what you do in romance. What shall I give her? Let's make a deal. Here's all my... you can see on the left all my goodies. I've got some coffee. And I'm going to give her a gift of coffee, and she gives me that kind of, you might not be such a scumbag as I first thought you were. And let's give credit to the artists. I think they've done a fantastic job with these art. At first I wasn't sure about them at all. I thought they were a bit cartoony and mobile gamey, but I've come round because I think their expressions are really interesting and really useful. Now we've come. I almost confused myself there. We've come forward to the medieval age, and Victoria, for no reason whatsoever. I think it was because I built a ship, and she's all, I'm the explorer, you're not allowed to explore, let's go to war, which is nuts. Especially as, frankly, my military capabilities are significantly ahead of Victoria's, and I like Victoria. So I'm English as well. When I played as England, I actually wanted my in the Island campaign, I wanted my redcoats to defeat the United States of America, and it didn't happen because I ended up fighting somebody else. But I still love my country. But on this occasion, London had to go. So what I haven't spoken about, even at this late stage, there's so much, isn't there? There's just so much. You just saw there a builder, and you'll probably know this already, but I'll mention it. In Civ 5 and other Civ games, you build a builder, and off he goes. And I'm saying he, I think they're all he's, and he builds, and he just builds stuff forever. And you can direct him yourself, or you can just put him on auto build, and he will just do what the AI says. This game's different. You build a builder, he builds 3 things, he drops down dead. Some of them get little boosts, and they'll build 4 or 5 things, but at the end of the day, they just build a few things. So you are spending a lot of time building your builders and managing where they go and prioritising. It's always a good idea to look at your city and say, where do I actually need to build a farm or a mine or whatever it is that you're building? What do I need to go repair right away? And I actually, I know this is heresy, but I kind of got into the habit of just letting the builders in Civ 5 just go off and do their own thing. I know it's not optimal, but with this game, that's just impossible. You've got to keep an eye on them, and you've got to keep them busy. So here we see that's those sort of characters with what looks like a little chili on top of them. They're my apostles, and they are religious units, expensive religious units, which are able to attack other religious units. And they're really important, because once these other people start coming into my country with their gobbledygook, trying to sell me some religion that I'm not interested in, that is counter to the teachings of Polygonism, then they have to be destroyed. So these are the Japanese guys are missionaries. They're pretty powerful when it comes to doing missionary work, but if they come up against an apostle, they are done for. But later on in the game, basically the Japanese get a roasting here, and we hardly see from them again. But later in the game, Greece, here she is again. Right, she's telling me something about her, which is that if I declare war against somebody for no good reason, she's going to not be very happy with me. So that's something to remember. I do find it funny that she will quickly call anybody a warmonger, given what she's wearing. That's sort of like badass military uniform. But I'm not going to argue with her. And what do we do here? Let's make another deal. I think I might be embarrassing myself now by just giving her stuff. Oh, should we give her some coffee now? We already gave her coffee. Yeah, we just maybe that. I think maybe I just repeated that piece of footage, which wasn't me just wanting to see her more. That was just a mistake, honestly, really. So here I am exploring some of the country. It's difficult with the Pangaea to get full view of everything because a lot of these countries were just like, nah, we don't want to do an open borders agreement with you, and I just can't be asked. We're just sending them out there. She wants what's she want to do here? She wants to make peace with me. I'm just not going to do it because the barbarians at the gate love, and we're gonna take it all over, and it's not. Oh, hello. Yeah, so here he is. I told you about him earlier. He's not very pleased with me because I haven't got a strong navy. And he's just gonna have to live with it. When you do have a strong navy, he's a very nice chap, and it's good to have him on your side. But at the moment, we're not going to be friends. Quick tea break here. What else? Spies. You build your spies. They don't just get given to you. I did not bother to build a whole bunch of spies. I just find managing them a real pain. So I just built a spy, and he protects my city. Later on, I had him protecting my industrial area because Rome kept sending spies in to damage my industrial area. But I mean, you might be the sort of person who loves spies and sending them out to cities and stealing stuff and listening to stuff. I used another one later on just to keep an eye on Athens when they were getting very, very powerful, and I wanted to know what was going on down there. But I used them quite minimally. But again, that's just a personal choice, and I've played with them before, and if they're stealing, if you're behind on technologies and they're stealing a bunch of technologies for you, then they're pretty great. So here is my builder. I've got a bunch of rainforest. I think I'm going to chop the rainforest down and turn it into a nice farm. Just while we finish off London here. I've got London here, and then just to the top right-hand screen, I've got Japan. We just sort of stay out of each other's way. Every now and again, this game will serve you a leader, just giving you their blah blah, just sort of like Japan. He turns up, and he's a lovely-looking fella, and he turns up and he says, the way of Bushido is the way to go. And I'm just like, mate, you've told me this 6 times already. Please fuck off, leave me alone. I don't need to hear it. I get it. So there is that sort of slight annoyance of these characters popping up and just taking up time, which I don't love, because it's not as if I'm, what does he want me to do? I don't get it really. So that's annoying. And there are little annoyances with this game. I found sometimes, I've got sausage fingers, so I found sometimes that clicking on the units can be a bit fiddly sometimes. I also found that if you leave your military units just sort of like out in the countryside somewhere rather than a city, it's quite easy to lose track of them. Again, my eyesight's not brilliant, but there we go. We keep the city. London's ours. And sorry, Victoria. There's no huge penalty on happiness when you capture a city. And I'm interested to see when I play the game, when I play the final review copy, how that affects gameplay. Because obviously, if you're a raging invader, that you're being tempered somewhat by the fact that if you take over 10 cities in like 50 goes, then you've got a real big, global happiness problem. With that taken away, is it basically saying to you, hey, come along and just invade cities? It's all about invasion now. Don't worry too much. That would sort of bother me, I think, and not being huge on invasion. But at the same time, I did always find oh my God, I'm going to have to sit there and make these people happy for 20 turns before I go and destroy another city. Just a little bit. I could get quite peevish about that, as I imagine you can as well. But again, it's that they're localizing the problem, and if London is not very happy for a while, well, that's fine. But if Washington and New York and Chicago are ticking along just fine, then I'm happy. You know what I haven't talked about is the fact that you have, if you look here on the top, you've got, see, the rifling and the natural history, right? So you've got two different research trees now. One is just like technologies that you research. You know, I want to learn about rifling, so I, you know, go along the tree, and it's just a technology tree, just like it's always been. And the second one is learning ideas. And so you learn democracy, or you learn natural history, and these things will confer upon you either some of those little cards that you can use when you go into your government screen, or little boosts and benefits, or technologies that you can use. And it's really great because instead of just having this one tech tree, now you've got two, and that mixes it up. When I met with the guys that made this game about a week before E3, a couple of weeks before E3 in Southern California, they said to me, look, I bet you play the game pretty much the same way every time you play. And I was like, damn right, that is how I play. And he said, we're trying to get away from that. We're trying to give people sort of challenges so that they can find different ways forward. And so they give you cities where it's just not appropriate to always go, you know, barracks, market, library, or whatever order you take, because you're going to want to build the things that are going to give you the best punch for your buck. There is a better saying than that, isn't there? Bang for your buck. So again, with having these two sort of helix trees which work with each other to get you towards certain ideal situations, then I think that opens up all sorts of interesting possibilities. I mean, clearly, when you play the game a few times, if you're the sort of person who's like, I'm into the military, I'm going to build a load of military compounds and military buildings, and then I'm going to build a load of military units, and I'm going to go out and invade everybody who's near me. You know, that's always going to be your game, and that's fine. You can have fun with that. And I'm sort of that sort of person as well. But at the same time, I like the fact that they've recognised that too many people are playing like that, and they've recognised that they've got to give us new options. And I mean, one of the things I'm probably going to say in this review, assuming that I'm still happy with the sort of more, the other 10 civilizations and the interplay between them, and crucially the more difficult playing modes, because this is, like I say, on Prince. I think one of the things I want to say is that I think they have succeeded in doing that, in giving us a more varied and interesting experience than Civ 5. And I think that the question for me is, would I now go back and play Civ 5? And I think the answer is no. And I'm surprised that I really, when I got this, I thought, let's have a look at this. I'm pretty sure I'm going to think it's okay, but I'm going to go back to Civ 5. Honestly, I'm happy with this. I don't think I'm going to go back. That's not to say it doesn't have its own problems. Like Civ 5 has its problems. Civ 6 too has its problems. That, the civilizations are still crazy nuts. They're AIs at the end of the day. They're presented to us as these really slick human beings, but they're still just numbers crunching away in the background, and it shows. And there are a bunch of other things which I'm not going to talk about now, but we can talk about in the review, which they may have been cleaned up by then, so I don't want to go there now. So it's not perfect, but look at the size and the scope of it. I don't think perfection is really possible on a game with just so many interlinking things going on. So Manchester, where I used to live, London, where I used to live as well, actually, and I used to live near Bristol. So these cities are all going to be mine now, which is the way it always should have been. And at some point I'm going to send my missionaries up here, and they're going to convert them to my religion, and all will be well. They will eventually become pretty useful cities. I mean, London, not as much as I would have liked. We're still dealing with these Japanese missionaries. They haven't got a message. They're milling around like a bunch of ants in my kitchen, and my apostles are just killing them. And when you kill your enemy religious units, you also get like a big boost, a big area effect boost for your religion and against their religion. So it's a high risk strategy to sending your military units into another country. If that other country is like really feeble in terms of religion, or isn't interested in it, you'll have a field day. But if they've got some sort of skin in the game when it comes to religion, it's a nightmare. And I if I decided to send my military units to Greece or Japan, who are pretty far up with this stuff, I don't think I'd have gotten anywhere with it. I think I'd have just died. So you really got to pick your fights with that stuff. We haven't got to the bit yet where Victoria basically throws in the towel. I got a bit ahead of myself saying that I was, there's Manchester. We're just tidying up. I feel bad. I do feel bad. She started the fight. I feel bad sending my my Renaissance military units against her medieval units. But this is civilization, and you can't. Here she is. She's not happy. I'm not going to be too. I'm not going to be too mean. We'll just have Bristol. I think we'll take some artifacts. It's not like the British have that many scruples about taking other people's cultural artifacts, especially in the Victorian age. So we'll take some of that as well. And let's see what she says. Well, then that's the other thing. You don't have to, you can see in real time whether or not she's happy. You don't have to present the deal and wait for her to say, I like it when she turns a little profile here and gives me a sort of I like the little bit of sweat that's on her top lip that kind of suggests that she's not as composed as maybe we think of her in history. The ITV of a British channel have got a slightly silly historical drama going on at the moment about Victoria, which I've been watching, and it's ridiculous, but it is interesting to see her as a sort of inexperienced, girlish ruler of the world, essentially in the 1830s. They've picked, I think, some other good leaders. Trajan is a slightly unusual one. They went with they didn't go with who did they go with in Greece? Pericles. They went Pericles in Greece, and instead of our old friend Alexander the Great. So they've done some interesting things, and even in America, going with Teddy Roosevelt. I'm actually reading a book about him at the moment. A history of him, his presidency. What an interesting and admirable person. In this game, playing against him, he's not admirable at all. He's a bit of a huffing, puffing, pompous man who gets on his high horse about other countries declaring war, but doesn't seem to have quite the same scruples when it comes to his own behaviour. But playing as him is pretty good. You get a couple of decent units, the Rough Riders. You get a Mustang fighter plane. I don't bother much with planes. But certainly not fighters. I like bombers, and you get also a naturalist unit, which is a nod to Roosevelt himself, which can create national parks and bring in a lot of tourists and culture, and those things become important in the late game. Right, what's happening here? I'm building stuff. As you can see, each city, as with all Civ games. You build a city and it's a bit crap. It's not building things fast enough. But as soon as you start building, an industrial district, you just sit there and let it build its industrial buildings. You go back to it 300 years later, and suddenly it's churning out tanks and guns, at an agreeable rate. And that's good. Like Detroit, I just stuck out there. Detroit and Charleston here. I stuck these cities there because I just didn't want anybody else there. I like to make sure no one's behind me. And they just that's kind of neat, isn't it? The way that the rocket launcher does that, which had taken out the last of the barbarians who've just been annoying me at that point for ages and ages. So here we are in the modern era. You can see that the nature of the weapons has changed considerably since my war with London. The map down here in the left-hand corner, there's more of it. You can see the different power structures. Around me, you've got the Germans, who are usually an absolute nightmare, but on this occasion left me alone. You've got the Japanese, who are quite happy to just sort of be semi-friendly with me. And you've got the Romans who just sort of sat there and sulked. And if you look in the top there, you can see my relationship with all of them. Obviously, Victoria's not happy. I'm sitting in the middle of London. I don't blame her. The Romans are on my doorstep. They're not very happy, but they're kind of living with it. The Germans are sulking a bit because I've got a lot of relationships with city-states, which they don't like. The Greeks have been sending their apostles to my... Here's one of them, a little light blue apostle, to my lands, and I denounced him about it. And I'm pretty close to declaring holy war against him. We're just never going to be pals. But he's a long way away, so we just kind of tolerate each other. And you can see that those trade routes have built lovely roads all over my... I don't have to sit there and worry about building roads. The the trade routes do it for me. And as the game goes on and your culture becomes more sophisticated, the roads become better. And you don't go from like roads to railroads, but the roads just become so much faster, and it sort of works for itself without you having to worry about it too much. It takes some of the donkey work out of managing your civilization. So we're here now into the last 20 minutes. We did the first 20 minutes in the ancient era, the second 20 minutes in the modern era. I do kind of apologise in a way, because watching someone play a game like this is really not that much fun, and that's sort of why I wanted to. Normally I do these videos for like 5-10 minutes, and I'll talk for the first 5 minutes and then just let you watch the gameplay. But I don't want to do that this time, because it is kind of boring. You do need the context, and also I do have a lot to talk about. And if you just want this version of it without me talking, just let me know and we'll like repost it. But I'm sure there are tons of other gameplay videos out there without chat. By the way, I do want to also mention that I turned the music off on this. The music is pretty good. It does that thing where it scrolls between the musical styles of different nations. The British one's nice, the American one's, they're all nice. But after about hour 20, I'm done. I've had enough. So I turned them off, and I realise you haven't heard them yet. But I'm just going to let you go through that process yourself when you play the game. So I keep on the sound effects. I think they might be turned down for various parts of this. And there you see that going on, where Islam just got a little boost against polygonism by killing some of my units. There's tons of things going on in this game that I'm just figuring out for the first time. Just figuring out at this point how to build a nuclear bomb and how that whole thing works. Because let's face it, in previous games, the whole nuclear bomb thing has been a bit of a mess. It's like build the bomb and then move it across where it's got to be closer, and then connect it with a plane, and now I've got a missile. And I just never really had much fun with nuclear bombs. There's a line to use when you're out for dinner next time. But yeah, let's see how. So in this game, I've been pretty much Mr. Nice Guy. You can see up there at the top, I've got 4 people liking me, really liking me, and I've got 2 people who are sort of okay with me, and I've only got 2 people who don't like me. And in this game, that's pretty good. But I'm going to change all that just for kicks. At the end of this game, I'm going to try to build a nuclear bomb, and I'm going to try to drop it on a city or 2, because we all want to see what happens when the bomb drops. We want to see that beautiful mushroom cloud rising into the sky as millions of lives are snuffed out beneath. Yeah, let's see how that goes. So there's a bomb being built in Washington right now. There's a backup bomb being built in New York, and I've got a project going on in Arpinum, which is, I think I'm learning how to build thermonuclear devices. What I do have is some stealth bombers, really advanced stealth bombers, which I believe will do the job of delivering the bomb. And over there, up in Detroit, you can see that I've got the raw materials needed to build the bombs. Now, raw materials throughout the game, it can be difficult when you don't have oil, coal, gunpowder, that sort of stuff, and you can get yourself in a situation where you're like, I'm just going to have to do this without oil. But they're not super specific. They're super specific about what units you need with any particular useful resource. Like, if you don't have oil, it's not like you can't build any planes or any tanks or any modern military units. The game cuts you a bit of slack in that regard, but there are certain units you can't build. So it's like, if you're playing an older game of Civ and you haven't got any oil, you're going to war. You've got to find that oil from somewhere, or coal, because you need factories. Whereas in this game, it's a little bit more forgiving about that. You can see the spaceport I'm building somewhere just for the hell of it. I'm way behind on science. I've got no chance of winning that. I'm ahead on points in this game. So if I get to the year 2050 and nobody launches a missile into Mars, or defeats 4 or 5 other civilizations, or with all the other victory conditions, then I'm going to win. And I'm feeling at this point pretty good that that's not going to happen. that if I just sit tight and keep an eye on my neighbours, I'm probably going to win this game. So we're going to go nuts here and start a nuclear war. One of the good things also is here is a city screen. I really like this because what you want to look at is, 1, are my people well fed? 2, are my people happy? And 3, in this case, do my people have enough housing? And if they don't have enough housing, you've got to build various buildings for them that will help them out. Starting off with a granary early on, or hospitals later, or rather districts, housing districts. And so you build a housing district and it attracts people, and so your housing ability goes up. So here I've got 28 houses for 27 citizens. That's not great. In Washington, in my capital city, there's a penalty. I'm going to definitely have to build a housing estate. Also, this tiresome religious war from the Greeks. I spent a lot of my currency on apostles, but there's a fairly cheap unit which you can buy, which is this guy, the Inquisitor, and he will undo all their work at a stroke. So he must have spent thousands and thousands of religious points sending his dudes over here. And I had a bit of a fight with them, with 4 or 5 of them, but really I'm just going to mop up and send my Inquisitor out, and he's going to bring order back to my cities. I can't remember if I showed you how to build a housing district, but basically it's just like any other district. The map will say to you, these are the places we think you should build this building, but there is a cost to be had. There's a farm there, or there's a mine there, or you might notice it's right next to an airport, which is really not a good place to build a housing district. Here I am managing these routes. To be honest, if it was up to me, I would just let these things just alone, just automatically. And if I decide at some point in the game that I want to go in and change that, then the same with the spies. I don't understand why I've got to keep telling them the same thing over and over again. But if there's a way to tweak that, I think that would be great. Maybe there's some pressing gameplay reason why you have to keep being reminded to do the same thing over and over again. But once I've decided that I need to defend Washington's agricultural district or whatever, then just leave me alone. Just don't keep reminding me about it. But there are bigger problems going on in the world than me having to click a couple of buttons. So where are we now? We are about 15 minutes from the end, where I will drop a nuclear bomb, or I'll attempt to drop a nuclear bomb on one of my cities. This is just me quick saving a few times, just because this build did crash a few times. I'm sure they'll have that figured out. So I sent a plane to Detroit because I had this idea that I would bomb Athens, but it's too far away. So Athens was spared the full fury of nuclear attack, and I'm afraid my old friend Victoria is going to have to eat this, because she's the one that's closest enough. I mean, I could have chosen to bomb the Romans, or I could have chosen to bomb the Japanese. I feel bad about dropping a nuclear bomb on the Japanese, so we're going to do it against the British, and we'll see how that goes. Not well. I mean, that spoiler, it doesn't go very well. It never goes well with dropping nuclear bombs. I mean, I don't think the makers of Civilization games are particularly pacifists. They probably would tell you that they are, but their worldview is pretty well demonstrated by the fact that in this game you win by crushing people and beating them and building military units. Civilizations are deemed as being great by building loads of armies, and it's pretty difficult to be a great civilization in this game just being one city that churns out endless works of art and endless great peoples, which is a part of the game that I haven't really had a chance to show you. I'll tell you about that. You just can't do that with this game. Some sort of little civilization that doesn't bother anybody. No, you can't do that. You've got to have a lot of soldiers, and you've got to have a lot of cities, and you've got to basically expand, and you've got to kill barbarians I mean, who says these people are barbarians? Well, we do, because we're civilizations. I don't want to get too political about this, and I know some of you are rolling your eyes, but I actually do think that these things are revelatory about the way that we think about ourselves, think about civilization, and I'd quite like to see a game built that's from the barbarians' point of view, which hopefully is something that we can see at some point in the future. So yeah, sorry about this little quick savey stuff. I think it was because at this point in the game, late on, the turns do tend to take quite a long time because you're dealing with so much stuff, and it is interesting. Now this is what keeps. Hang about. What's she got to say here? Yeah, I'm going to declare a surprise war now. Oh yeah, she's not happy. She's not happy, bless her. And I don't blame her, because in this game, you've generally got to have a good it's over between me and her, that's for sure. She's not happy with me, not one little bit. So yeah, you can just declare a surprise war, but the effects are going to be egregious and nobody's going to like you. But what you can do is find ways to declare wars that seem to be justifiable. Right, here we go. Nuclear war. I had a choice between Liverpool and Newcastle. I'm sorry, Newcastle. I chose you. Here we go. Boom. No mushroom cloud. No mushroom cloud at all. Maybe that will be there in the final build. I think it's safe to say that Newcastle is in a bit of a mess right now. I don't know, there was a British TV show in the 80s called Threads, which showed a nuclear attack on the city of Sheffield. And I know in America they had something similar around the same time. But I've got to tell you, the British one was really much, much darker. It was really nasty stuff. So the Romans, those peace-loving people, are not happy about me being a warmonger. I can't really blame them. I have just dropped a nuclear bomb. This guy is not happy with me either. He's denounced me. I'm an evil upon the world. I can't disagree. I can't disagree. Now this guy makes me laugh. He's just like, oh, this technology works. This technology works. That's so interesting. And coming from a country that suffered so horribly from nuclear bombs, well, you can see the irony. And here are the Germans in his military uniform, feeling very sorry for the people of Newcastle, who had to face the bombs of the United States of America. So, no, fair enough. I can laugh at these, but they're right. I shouldn't have done it. I only did it for you, my dear viewer, so that you could see what would happen when you drop a nuclear bomb on another city. And now you're going to be like, oh, I wonder if in the final game they do put a nice, like, big mushroom cloud in the sky, and you'll be like, oh, I'll have a look and see. So I apologise if I haven't really scratched that itch for you, because I probably will never use a nuclear bomb again. Apart from the one that I'm going to drop in about 5 minutes time, just to check and see if the mushroom cloud thing doesn't actually happen. So let's go and have a look and see how much damage was done. Yeah, lots. So the city of Newcastle is a wreck. I think the fields around it are polluted. There's not much we can do there. I have made a rod for my own back there, and I really. If I was playing this game for real, I'd be kind of bummed, thinking, not only have I got to clean up this diplomatic nightmare, which is probably never going to go away at this late stage in the game, but I've also got to clean up the city of Newcastle, which doesn't sound like fun at all. So here we are, just kind of tidying up. You get into that late game, and you're like, oh, look at all these things that I could have built earlier, and you're trying to build them now. It's kind of willy-nilly to a certain extent. I'm kind of trying to keep my rivals at bay. I think when I look at my scores up in the top right hand corner, I'm pretty high on religion, I'm pretty high on culture. I'm in second place I think on most of them, but score wise I'm ahead of the game. And so here's just a regular bombing raid. It's shameful that there is a state-of-the-art B-52 bomber basically attacking the Black Prince, who died in 1392 or something. So now we're going to move the second bomber over to Manchester for our second nuclear bomb. Even as I say these things, I'm feeling less and less good about myself. I was quite happy when I had built my civilization and it had culture and it had art and it had friends. And, you know, let this be a lesson to you that bullying your neighbours just to get a bit more land or just for the visceral thrill of nuclear war is never a good idea. Here is one of my inquisitors just mopping up that invasion that came earlier on from the Greeks. They're going to go in, they're going to get rid of all the Greeks' religion, and all will be well, at least in terms of religious cohesion in my land. I'm not even sure what kind of a benefit that confers upon my civilization. It may be nothing, but it makes me feel good. So, and that's important. So the people of Newcastle now are the knights. I don't know why they're hanging around in nuclear polluted Newcastle. Maybe they'll come out as like zombies or something. So we're getting to the end now, and I'm going to start wrapping up. We're 8 minutes away from the end. I've never talked for this long in my life. My throat is already starting to hurt. I'm just going to sip some more of this tea, which, by the way, is now cold. Hold on. Stone cold. Yes, I think that the impression you get, first of all, if you've played a lot of Civ 5, is kind of jarring. The graphics do have a sort of cartoonish aspect to them, but you soon get used to it, or I soon got used to it, and it does feel a little bit less kind of serious and mature than the early one. I did worry about that because for me, Civilization is a fantasy, but it's a fantasy of being in charge of the real world. You know, I sort of liked the one where they went into space. I think I gave it an 8 out of 10 and it was okay, but it kind of lacked soul for me because I'm just not that into science fiction, but I am into history. So this idea of a historical world in which I can interact with, which I can own, is one that I can enjoy. So making it into a cartoon or something that doesn't seem serious bothered me, but I got over it. And the systems they seem to work really nicely with each other. They've basically presented the exact same experience as you've always played. Nothing really. You change this game, you play this game, and it's completely familiar. All they've done is they've kind of flipped some of the systems upside down, or they've taken them apart and put them back together again slightly differently. The overall effect, I think, is to take away some of the things which were irritating or annoying or which made the game slightly predictable. That's not to say that this game won't have things about it that are irritating, annoying and slightly predictable. But, you know, given that we're now 6 years on from the launch of Civilization 5, I think this is a sort of step forward in many respects, but not one that is going to make you go, oh my God, they've completely reinvented real-time strategy. They've completely reinvented Civilization. To a certain extent, you know, if you're on a budget and you don't want to spend $60 on a new Civ game, then I'm not going to say to you, you've got to go out and get this. Because there are, in many respects, it's a lot like the previous game. But if you're ready to move on, and $60, here he is now. He's finally realised that nuclear bombs are perhaps not as sexy as he once thought. And quite rightly, he's denounced me. They've all denounced me. At the top of the screen, you can see that the only one now who's got any time for me at all is the Viking. And frankly, he doesn't seem to be the brightest penny in the box. And here he is. I'm a disgrace. He's denounced me at last. Well, you know, bravo to you. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, so I think that if you're ready for a new Civ, I don't think you're going to be buying this and then going, no, this isn't for me. I have to set it back, or I have to go back to Civ 5. We're all different. Here she is. She's had enough of me now. I still think she's fantastic. I still kind of love her. I did play her as her on the one of the maps, and she's fantastic. You get, for every horse unit you build, you get 2 horse units, and that soon mounts up into just incredible navy that crushes all beneath its hooves. So if you're playing, when you play this game, if you're on a sort of big expanse of land, you definitely want to think about playing as the Scythians. I'm gonna have to go and look where the Scythians come from. I have no idea, which is completely ignorant of me. So just finishing up here, happy buildings, cultural buildings, just making sure that when it comes down to the final score, I have got a yeah, Liverpool. It's time for you to go now. I have, yeah. So just making sure that I've got all the I'm ticking all the boxes that I need to tick. I've kept quite a few cities, quite a few city-state suites, so they've been conferring lots of benefits on me throughout this game. I've kept my trade routes up to date, and I've managed them in such a way that they're not trundling across vast miles just to pick up one piece of food and one piece of building. I keep them close to each other while at the same time building roads out to the more remote locations. At the same time, I've made sure that my builders are taking care of all of the resources at my disposal. There's the first city I've raised. I just wanted to see how that would go down, but it's interesting that I think if you look closely, you can still see some of those little green marks suggesting that it's not a good time to just go in there and plant your grapevines just yet. That vintage is not going to go down well, on the $6.99 rack at Safeways. So, and Liverpool, we're going to do the same. So overall, there are no kind of crazy new systems that we've never had before. Everything is just kind of tweaked from, they spent 6 years, they came out with 3 updates for Civilization 5. All that work has gone into this game. All the lessons they learned from the less than hugely successful sci-fi game have also been kind of learned, and a lot of them rejected. Here there's no sci-fi web. It's back to a sci-fi tree, which I thought was interesting. A science web rather than a science tree, which I found to be pretty interesting. Now I am finally running out of things to say as we reach the hour mark. I hope one or two of you are still here. I apologise if I've been droning on a bit. I think I got it covered. There's an article that goes with this video that discusses most of these details, hopefully in a way that is less rambly. And then that article comes out on, I think, Tuesday. And then when the game comes out, we'll have a review. Not sure yet if we're going to get a copy of the review beforehand, so that we can play and keep you up to date with what's going on. But having played 33 hours of this, I'm pretty comfortable that you're not going to be super disappointed. I mean, I don't, like I say, if you're ready for the 21st, you're ready for Civilization to sort of like hyperspeed into some future of the unknown, you're not going to be happy. If you want basically the exact same game as you've been playing for the last 6 years, you're also not going to be happy. But if you want something that's a bit different, that fixes some of the problems, that gives you new paths, new directions, new characters, then I think you're not going to be super disappointed. I don't want that to be my definitive review, because it's not. But having played as a prince on 3 maps, across as 3 characters, I'm pretty happy so far. I can't wait to play at a more challenging level when the game comes out, and at that point I hope you'll come back and we can talk about how good the game is. I'm really interested in hearing your opinions in comments. You can let me know what you think. Just here showing off some of the detail of the relationships. You can see where I try to build up a good relationship with her by saying, opening an embassy and giving her gifts and having the same government. But as soon as I did something that she was really angry about, that was all completely forgotten. And so the negatives, you've got to really work hard to outweigh the negatives against the positives. And the other thing about dropping a nuclear bomb, of course, is that you lose a whole bunch of people as well. So my name's Colin Campbell. I'm from Polygon. I really like Civ 6.